All right. All right, cool. We'll get started. We have about 30 minutes, and then there's lunch with Bill Gates, so I'm sure everyone wants to rush over there. So quick question. How many of you have read the Disruptive Innovations book, Clay Christensen? How many of you have heard the word disruption multiple times in the last few weeks? Everyone? Right? Okay, so what are we going to talk about? And then obviously the second piece of that, which we're going to talk about, is skills gap. How many of you have heard about the word skills gap problem? All of you, right? So what we're going to talk about here is the underpinnings of what causes disruption in various industries. And the World Economic Forum has provided a great framework and a perspective on the industrial revolutions over the past 250 years and how they break through technologies that comes out from nowhere and creates disruption. And it's very important to understand this framework and how it disrupts. Before we talk about the learning, this conference is all about learning, but before we even get to learning, the fundamental thing what learning outcomes provide is the work, the effectiveness in the work. So we're going to see that this kind of breakthrough technologies, what they do in how are they changing the workplace and how we work, and that's going to have its implication on learning. So just a quick introduction on myself and the context. I spent the entire week in January in Davos at the World Economic Forum talking about this fourth industrial revolution. I spent some time serving on the California Workforce Investment Board. Also spent a year at the White House getting some perspective from a federal government level as a White House Innovation Fellow. And then for the past 18 plus years, I've been in Silicon Valley both as a venture capitalist as well as a serial entrepreneur, built about 3 companies, venture-backed, sold it, and firsthand have experienced disruption in many, many, many industries. And I'll relate to some of the stories. I'm also a founder of a countrywide platforms like Skill Up India and Code for India that I work with the governments there to help at a very mass, large scale, 250 million people that needs skilling and upskilling. So I'm coming from that perspective. And a lot of my perspective is still very outside in because I'm not from the traditional education industry, so I didn't spend time in any of the K-12 markets or higher ed markets. So you will see a very outside in perspective on the industry. So let's get started on the framework. And this is courtesy World Economic Forum. These are not my graphics or slides, but just to give you a framework in terms of the first industrial revolution began in 1784 with the advent of steam power and energy, and that powered the railroads, the railways, helped boosted connections between various geographies, and that was like the first revolution way before even electricity, right? But that was the first time the word connection and connection between people and geographies and all of that got started. The second one was around 1870s when electricity was invented, and with electricity and another fuel source, which is petroleum, we had the power to drive mass production. So that was the first time when mass production got created, and that led to what we see today in the workplace, which is the division of labor, right? So with mass production came this whole concept of you have certain lines and line of work, and you put people into a mass production. The third industrial revolution, which most of us have lived through because we've not lived through the first and the second, so this is something that we can all relate to, unless some of you are way younger than this era, which is the digital age, right? So the advent of television, IT, information technology since 1969, the birth of the transistor in Silicon Valley from Fairchild and Texas Instrument and Intel, all of that. And that gave rise to the automation that we are seeing in the workplace with computers and internet and connectivity and all of that. Well, so now that brings to the fourth industrial revolution, which has just started. So welcome to the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And this ride is going to be super fast. It's going to be roller coaster ride, driving a lot of disruption. And that's why it's very, very important to understand this revolution, what is happening. It's driven by mainly AI and big data. And what it is causing is most important, the effect, the cause and the effect. With AI and lots of other technologies like robotics, SMAC, 3D printing, IoT, nanotechnology, VR, AR, but in general, there are some few things to really understand is, number one, the cost of processing information is dramatically declining, right? So the ability to process information, and not just information, which was the previous era. So to understand the difference between the third industrial revolution that already had computers versus the current one is that the processing is not just data, which was the computing power. Now we have the ability with AI to process language. So what you're speaking, right? We all experience it, at somewhat primitive level today, and also process images. So when I see you, I know that who you are. Combination of that kind of processing it's driving extreme automation. It's going to drive way extreme automation and connectivity. And that has some pretty major implication and fundamental changes in how the workplace is going to be of the future. And when I say future, not really far away. We're going to see that the changes in the next 5 to 10 years, and the changes that we're going to see because of this industrial revolution, the next 5 to 10 years are going to dwarf all the changes in technology that we've seen in the past 50 years, right? And that's why I'm saying that this era of exponential technologies is going to be a super fast ride, and some of the data and the stats is pretty interesting. If you look at this chart, which is from Singularity University and my friend Vivek Wadhwa from there, if you look at the progress of the mankind, for the past 9,000 years, and if you see the evolution of technological or just breakthrough inventions, it took us to reach at a scale of 1,000, about a million people over there, or a billion people, to you can hit up to 6 billion people today that we can connect. In just the last few decades of internet, we've been able to reach 6 billion people. So you see the curve, the growth curve is super exponential. It was linear until the 2000s. So in the past 15 years, since 2000, the rate of change and the rate of adoption of new technologies is just going amazingly fast at an exponential curve, and that has some pretty massive effect that we're going to talk about. So one of the things just to talk about, just to understand and fathom just how much of a computing power change that is happening. We've all heard about Moore's law, but this scale that shows to you that at on a logarithmic plot, that in just about 20 years, we will have a computing power equivalent to a human brain, right? So that's the scenario that a lot of futurists are talking about, that you can pretty much replace to some extent, depending on how far we go into, but you can have a power of a human brain at not some exorbitant insane cost, but something at $1,000 like a laptop. Another data point that you may all have heard of is this project called Genome. Have you heard of the $1,000 Genome Sequencing project? So there was a prediction, just about 10 years back, that it would cost like some insane amount, like $2 billion or something like that, to sequence a genome, for one person. And today we are already getting to that breakthrough where it will cost $1,000 to sequence the entire genome in one person. So you get your complete genome sequencing, for your individual. So your doctors now are not reacting to some things, but they can be very proactively looking at your genome and saying, predicting what can happen. So we are at that breakthrough in the medical science because of this computing power. The other perspective that the way I look at the technology evolution is, this is kind of my way of looking at things is, hey, there are three ways technologies are penetrating. In the past 20 years, we've looked at technology that was around us, like you go around to your workplace and office and you see computers and all of that. From there on, in the last 10 years, it has become more like, technology with us, which means we are carrying technology, like, gadgets and things like that. And the next phase that we're going to see in the next 10 years or 15 years is technology within us, right? And so everything that you're seeing, one way to predict the future would be to look at technology that is around you and with you and see that how much of that is going to penetrate and go within you. And that has a lot of consequences. So now, with all the backdrop around how this disruption, all these technologies, the breakthrough technologies that are driving this disruption, what is the impact on work and learning? And we're going to talk about disruption, but there's also good news and bad news with the disruption. So one thing, by the way, I don't know how many of you are in the education industry, but I've spent for the past 2.5 years in the EdTech industry, and one common theme that I see across educators or educational institutions is there's a tremendous denial of disruption. So when you talk to people in the education industry, in the academia, and you talk about disruption, the first thing that you get is like, it's not going to happen to me, or it's not going to happen to our industry. And what I have seen that movie before, because many industries, if you look at when the iTunes came out, and overnight, the entire record industry faced a disruption. If you talk to Universal Studios of the world, their executives, and they will tell you that overnight their world changed, their business changed. And the reason why it changed overnight was that there was a common characteristics between what I see in the education industry and many other industries that have been disrupted in the past is they all had the same thing, which is they were in denial, right? So this session is very important in this conference because this is about EdTech, and we have to be talking about disruption. So so before we get into learning, let's talk about work, how that is getting disrupted. So fundamentally, what all these technologies are going to do is create a hyper-connection between production to consumption. So one way to look at the entire industrial output, right, is fundamentally related to two things. It's supply and demand, right? It's production and consumption. And a lot of businesses make money by connecting the dots between point A to point B, between production and consumption. This chart, if you see on the very top, there are every single industry that produces stuff or services for people, right? And education is right there. It's number 2 over there. So it's not that education is not going to get affected, right? From insurance to electronics to education to retail to automotive, all of these things that are getting produced, and then they get pushed into consumption, and all the other devices that a consumer uses from, and this, courtesy IBM, all these devices that we use, from appliances and laundry and climate control to mobile devices, utilities, lightings, these devices are going to connect directly to the production sources, right to the source. So when this happens, there is going to be a tremendous collapse in the value chain, and any person, or any individual who is working in any industry, the fundamental thing in the workplace is going to be that collapse of that value chain and connecting directly from the source to the sink, or from production to consumption. And how does that affect now in terms of, so here's another aspect of how this is the positive thing, good news about disruption, because AI is going to become pervasive in every aspect of human experience, right? So with all this AI, what's the good news? Well, the good news is, would you like to have a chef that is controlled by your mobile phone what to cook for tonight for dinner? We all would love to do that, right? So we'd all love to have that scenario, right? You have people who needs, there's a lot of data going around that even in the most developed and rich countries, one of the big social problem that is rising up is loneliness, right? And AI and technology can help people to not feel lonely. You can see that on the bottom right. So there are lots of positive cases where, or advantages of this new technologies. But now, and let me just cover quickly some of the key things on the positive side, and then we're going to talk about the flip side of it, that how does it impact the learning and the work. But here's the breakthrough from Peter Diamandis. He's one of the world's famous futurists with Ray Kurzweil at Singularity, right? Cheap, ample power of reusable energy. Pretty much everything, the whole world will have almost cheap power because we'll go to solar pretty rapidly. The cost of solar is also going down dramatically, exponentially in the downward trend, right? Smarter agriculture, you can have vertical farms in your city, you can have a vertical farm in your backyard, in your house. We talked about, robotics, but, driverless cars that you all know about, clean water around the globe. Better healthcare, we talked about that. If I can sequence your genome, we can turn the whole healthcare industry from reactive to proactive. Interconnected household device that we saw in the previous chart. And then fundamentally, okay, this is what we're about here, education for all, right? Which is not just limited to classroom, not just limited to degree programs, not just limited to credentialing and things like that, which is what the old industry is based on, but learn anywhere, anytime. This is a chart that talks about, again, when this future is arriving. So this is a pretty eye chart. I won't go through this, but it's an interesting chart that you can look it up on the website. And this is a response and a survey from some of the top technologists and what they think that when some of these technologies are arriving. So you can start making your reservations for some of those products. So now, so those are all the upside scenarios. What is at risk, right? That's fundamental, and can we be prepared for it? Because it's very important to be prepared. A number of jobs have lost, a number of people's lives have been devastated with a lot of disruption happening in a number of industries. We've seen Blockbuster going out of business like this. We've seen all the record companies. All right, so the first thing that is absolutely going to happen is this, that all the repetitive low-skill job will get automated with AI. Number two, all the routine medium-skill job is also going to get automated with AI. Number three, with those two things, plus you saw the previous chart of all the cool stuff that we will have right from our kitchen to having a driverless car and all of that stuff. If we don't take care of the people working in these two areas, we're going to have, and we are already starting to see the data here in the US, there's a ton of data on the internet which is saying income inequality. How many of you have heard that income inequality issue in the US? All of you? Yes. It's a huge issue. And that's going to get only intensified. There is currently, governments don't have an answer to it. If you read on the internet in the US, government doesn't have an answer to income inequality. I live in Silicon Valley, which is one of the richest places in the country for past 20 years. You can see income inequality in Silicon Valley. And all the smartest people in Silicon Valley, they don't have an answer to it. You drive from Palo Alto to East Palo Alto, less than a mile, and you can see a massive inequality, right? Because we're not solving that problem. And it's only going to intensify. So this is a real challenge that, if we want to work on the big problem, this is the big, hard problem. Okay, how are we going to, now, this industry, the education industry, has a lot of responsibility and accountability to solve this problem. Because on one hand, we're talking about skilling people from low skill to higher skill. On the other hand, if you see, the cost of tuition is just going up, up, and up. My son is in a private college here in Southern California, and I just got a letter a few months back that his tuition is still going to go up from $45,000 a year to some crazy $56,000 a year, right? So we're living in this world where on one hand, we need to bring down the cost of education. On the other hand, we're increasing education. We're making it really inaccessible. So this is what is at risk. Another risk data. So while I was when I was at Davos this January, this is World Economic Forum, who does a lot of research, assuming they have a lot of money to do a lot of deep research, and they have smartest people from Harvard and Stanford and all of that. And they're crunching up the data, and they are saying 5 million jobs are at risk, right? So we have unemployment issues even not just in developing countries, we have unemployment issues in developed nations. In Europe has unemployment issues. The United States, we had some good time in the, the last few years in the economy, and obviously, the job growth has been there, but overall, we do face an unemployment issue, right? So this is not, okay, so let's try to unbundle this and say, why is this problem? So I have a framework that I've coined this 3 A's, which is what I call the automation, the APIfication, and the atomization. These are the 3 fundamental mega trends that is affecting the work. So we already saw automation, right? So all those previous charts were all about robotics and AI and all of that taking over a lot of the jobs and the work that, that people do today. But what is not being reported is the APIfication that is happening already in the work and atomization. And how does education and learning will have to adapt to this new mega trends, right? Well, so atomization is being reported now, and there was an article in Wall Street Journal just last week, and there was also articles in TechCrunch about the gig economy, right? So how many of you have heard about the gig economy? We got the numbers reported, was highest ever. 700,000 people joined the gig economy in 2015. We have 44 million Americans who are participating in that economy. 15 million people depend pretty much full-time on getting that alternative work, which is the gig economy. And it's already happening with not just that atomization, but this is APIfication. So think about TaskRabbit and think about Ubers of the world. What they are doing is they are not atomizing it, but they are also APIfication, which means that you can take a piece of work and you can chunk it down into, let's say, multiple parts, and you can throw away that piece of parts in different places to different people. They may not be your employees, and then you can again reassemble them together virtually, and you can get work done. So if you can do if you can do your production or your work that way, the whole traditional way of full-time employment, having a proper office, going to work, getting some benefits, getting health care, a lot of things basically starts going away. So the whole traditional world of what we are operating even today in the workplace will become completely obsoleted. And there are already, you're seeing the unrest happening with, the drivers on Uber or Lyft or any one of those car services. How are they going to get their benefits? How are they going to get their health care? By the way, this is not just happening, contrary to the popular belief, this is not just happening in the online economy. We talked about all the examples of online. But actually, the government data, what is showing is that this contracting and gig economy is actually accelerating even in the offline world, right? So the highest increase was actually in the yellow thing, which is independent contractors. So here's the positive and the negative, right? We all will have, as we time slice, we will all have flexibility to pursue many, many, many interests. So currently, if we are just tied to like one role or one job, we will be doing multiple things, and we will have time to pursue multiple things. So that's a positive. The negative is, how are you going to get a predictable, secured income throughout your time, because you may have unpredictability and ups and downs in your cash flow. That's a negative. How do you solve for that? And second is, how are you going to get your benefits? Because if you don't have a lot of people will have to be self-insured and things like that. So the bottom line is that, this fundamentally changes, the whole outcome for education, because this whole ROI on a $250,000 degree becomes completely, questionable, because a lot of these changes that are happening, if you see even from a career standpoint, in fact, I'll just move one more chart, is this, where millennials, which are now 50% of the workforce in America and many other countries, right, they are predicted to have almost 12 to 14 careers in their lifetime. So no school or college can prepare someone for 14 different careers, right? This gentleman, I met him last night. He's studying at Stanford, right, at LDT, the design school. When you're in college, they're teaching you one discipline. They're teaching you selected a particular major to go after one career. So the 4-year or any kind of a college education program, which is completely dependent on the third industrial model, right? We talked about we moved from a third to the fourth industrial model revolution. is all dependent on a front loading that for the first 20 years or first 24 or 25 years of your life, you study about something and then you're supposed to apply, but they cannot prepare you for 14 different careers, right? I have had already 6 different careers since I passed college, and nothing that I've learned in my college has helped me other than the social skills. So that's one implication. The second implication is, as I mentioned, that there will be the APIification. Now, this is the impact on learning. So just like there is an APIification of the work, we need to do an APIification of curriculum and learning, so that what we could do is this, that, hey, I don't need to learn and spend 4 years in college and campus and spend my parents' money or take some big loan out there and enjoy the club, the retreat lifestyle in beautiful campuses in America. What you do is maybe you spend that fun time for a year, and then the other curriculum is API-fied, right? Which means you go and take a role somewhere, and then you say, well, I want to change another role, so now you are taking another 5 courses. So I would look at the future and say the future of education is going to be more like you buy a 20-year club membership of Stanford, not like a 4-year degree program, right? And they should become selling memberships, 20-year membership, 50-year membership, lifetime membership, and then as and when you want to go and fuel and refuel, I can say, well, I'm done with this career, 6 months, I'm going to go back into the campus and enjoy that 6 courses or 8 courses, and then I'm all prepared to come back. But this doesn't work, because what we also have, which is really bad in our current education system, is age discrimination. I mean, if a person like me who is half bald goes to a college, I mean, people look at you at strangely, like, what are you doing here? You don't fit into the crowd, I mean, because we've created this whole aura here that, college is for like young, cool people, and like the older people are supposed to be working. No, so we got to get rid of that, even the whole cultural and the psychological and the whole society norms, in terms of, it can't be based on age discrimination. So what I'm talking about at club membership is like micro-learning and nano-learning, right? And I know I'm running almost 5 minutes before the time. So here are some of the disruptions that are happening already that I want to draw attention to. So one of the things which is really cool is Freshman Academy that edX who is a great partner of ours at EdCast, has launched with ASU, which is the host for this conference. Adam Braun, who is a great innovator, who's the founder of Pencils of Promise, he has started Mission U, which is a completely alternate school. You don't need 4 years, 2 years, and you learn some of the quick skills, and you go to market. Competency-based education, corporate MOOCs, and corporates getting into giving away micro degrees so that you're not spending money on something that you're not going to use. This is almost coming to the conclusion. So this is where the final recipe is how to not get disrupted. So if you look at the 2015, the skills in demand, this is the World Economic Forum chart. So they have 10 skills that are top skills for in 2015, which is today, and they're projecting 5 years from now in 2020, what are the top skills? If there is one skill that you see that has moved the highest points, that's creativity. It is today ranked number 10 in 2015. It has moved up to number 3, right? So that's the lesson to be learned, that it is not about what you learn in the academical curriculum, because that's going to get obsoleted very fast. In fact, there's a AT&T CEO said that every 4 years, 50% of your knowledge gets obsoleted. So it's not about the academic knowledge. It's not about skilling, but it's about creativity. So in conclusion, I have 3 key takeaways in how to avoid getting disrupted, because we talked about disruption. We talked about the bad effect that it happens to, when your industry gets disrupted. Number 1 is the skill that everybody will need is the ability to create, 0 to 1. So if you can create something, if you can invent something, you will never get disrupted, because it's not a routine thing. It's the highest form of creativity that you saw in the previous chart. The second is knowledge on demand. When we talk about skills gap, by the time we talk about skills gap, it is already too late. The underlying skills gap problem is the knowledge gap problem, because if you don't have the knowledge in a space, you're not going to go out and invest your time and money into skilling. So That's what my company does, which is EdCast, which we bring knowledge on demand and keep you every day smarter. So that's the second thing. That's people will have to adopt to a different lifestyle, which is saying, I don't have to go and get myself skilled. Well, number one is, before even skilling, I want to get knowledgeable every day and become a lifelong learner. And the third is that everybody will have to become an entrepreneur, period. So with, the whole economy and everything is moving towards what we say is an entrepreneurial age. We are in an entrepreneurial age where everyone has the ability to become an entrepreneur, pick up the entrepreneurial skills, because that's your best defense, that's your best insurance against not getting disrupted. And there will be enough opportunities for you to assemble resources from anywhere in the world through that, use that APIification of work to your advantage and create something. So those are the three things that the colleges, universities, or anybody who is in the learning business needs to be teaching, or every individual must be learning these three skills. Everything else can just follow this, but without this, you could get very easily disrupted. So thank you very much, and happy to take any questions after this.